The top 5 things successful entrepreneurs do to be successful. This is really inspired from a number of sources. First and foremost, my own direct experience working, running my own company, and lots of articles that I've read on the subject for really many years now. The subject is covered quite a bit, and recently I stumbled on another article that talked about some of the top billionaires around the world, including Richard Branson, and what are some of the things these people do every single day that it would seem make them successful. And a few things ring out very strongly as an underlying common denominator almost always across the board. Anytime I read one of these articles, the top 2 answers here that I've given you are really the top among the answers given in any of these articles. The first one is exercise. Without fail, it seems that every one of these people talks about exercise. And one of the articles I read, Richard Branson refers to the fact that even when he's traveling, no matter where he is in the world, he still gets up at 5 a.m. to carry out his exercise routine. It's that important. It's the most important thing. And so you see this, and of course like many of us, I go in and out of routines where I can exercise regularly for a while and then I fall out of it. And I think any of us who've done this can attest to the fact that when we're in a routine of exercising regularly, we just feel better and we have more energy, and that plays its role in the workplace when we're getting things done, when we're working on building and growing our companies, and we're doing it very effectively. The next thing is get up early. A lot of these people seem to get up very early. I have been an early riser myself for many, many years, and I've stuck with that actually mainly because I have found firsthand experience that I get much more done when I'm up earlier in the morning, especially if I want to include that exercise routine in that part of my day. Just get it done, get it out of the way. And there's really no better way to start the day, not to mention the fact that any personal trainer that I've worked with, and I've worked with quite a few, has sort of attested to the fact that when you start first thing in the morning by exercising, you actually give your metabolism a jump start. So especially for somebody like myself who's looking to lose weight, that becomes that much more important to do the exercise routine first thing in the day. Now, what comes next? If I'm getting up early, I probably want to get a good night's sleep. And that comes up through and through. The articles talk about this. These guys like Richard Branson, if they're getting up at 5 in the morning to exercise, then they need to go to bed pretty early to get that good night's sleep. But that's another thing I hear through and through. A lot of these entrepreneurs, these very successful entrepreneurs, the people we all know and read about, they all say this. They all say you need to get a good night's sleep. And I've seen firsthand, again, when I'm in the routine of exercising, when I'm getting up early, and when I'm doing that on the heels of a good night's sleep, I find that I'm that much better focused. I'm much, much better focused when I'm well rested. I'm much less prone to distractions, things that distract me like email notifications and other things. When I'm tired, it's very easy for me to let myself get distracted and sort of lend myself to those things when I really don't want to be doing that. And then staying focused, feeling fresh, feeling energetic, I get much more done in much less time, and then I have the free time that I want if I want to go spend time catching up on emails or doing other things that normally would sort of represent distractions for me. Next is honesty. I mentioned this in the write-up. I've been reading Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About the Hard Things, and he talks about this, not necessarily directly, but I get it out of his message, that it's important to be very honest with your employees and with pretty much everyone in your life. Being honest is going to go a long way. For one thing, and this is especially important in the business world, it builds trust. People know, they have a way of knowing when they're dealing with somebody who's always honest, who's being honest. Even if somebody's just met you, they may not know right away. But if you're the kind of person that's just always honest about everything you do, they're going to find that out. They're going to figure it out, right? And you'll never really have to explain away anything. You'll never have to remember what you said because you know that you've always been honest with everyone. So honesty is important, and I think that actually goes inside of the last tip, really, which is good communicators. All these successful entrepreneurs seem to be very good communicators. Honesty being a critical part of how you can be a good communicator. Just be honest with people. It ends up being that simple. But more than that, I shared the story that Ben Horowitz shares in his book, The Hard Thing About the Hard Things, that has to do with this whole honesty or good communication thing, where he has an issue where somebody's complained to him about the cursing in the workplace, that they felt it was excessive, and he thinks about it. And you can read the, my version of the story, or better yet, read the book and read his version of the telling of his own story. But basically, he thinks about it, and he's got a dilemma, because on one hand, it's prevalent in the kind of companies that he's running, software development companies. He doesn't want to alienate people who are accustomed to sort of communicating and interacting this way. At the same time, he's got to deal with the complaint. He can't just ignore it. And ultimately, he comes up with a solution, and it confronts it head on and communicates with his company honestly and tells them, look, we're going to allow it because it is prevalent, it is commonplace, and we don't want people to feel uncomfortable like they have to censor themselves. But it is not acceptable to use that kind of language in a manner that's intended to intimidate people or to berate people. In other words, you can curse if you feel you need to throw in an F-bomb to emphasize something you're saying, fine, but what won't be tolerated is the use of that kind of language in any manner that's in any way intimidating, and certainly not in any manner that represents any kind of harassment. So I think it's a good example of how somebody like him, who has definitely proven to be a very successful entrepreneur, has dealt with a tough issue head on and communicated well in order to resolve the issue. And he explains in the book, after he tells that story, that he never had to deal with it. It never came up again. It was never an issue again. People respected the policy, and that was that. So I think good communication is really important. And I mentioned this in the write-up. If you're somebody who you can be honest about this and say, I'm not a good communicator, then it might be important to hire somebody who is, so that you can kind of translate to them, or they can translate for you in terms of what message you want to get across, and then they can figure out how to get that message across effectively, whatever that might be. So those are the 5 things. Exercise, get up early, get a good night's sleep, be honest, and communicate well. And I think if you put those 5 as the starting point, of course there are many more, and I've read many more of them, but these are the 5 that really come up the most often. And the first 2 or 3 of them actually seem to come up across the board every single time I read an article on this subject. That's the top 5 things successful entrepreneurs do to be successful. As always, I hope you learned something here and had some fun along the way. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you on the web.